I call to order the May 11, 2020 business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request everyone in our audience to please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Let's please cite the pledge together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Present.
Ms. Bolton?
Present.
Mrs. Bowers?
Here.
Mr. Lindy?
Here.
Mr. Messer?
Present.
Mr. Morosky?
Here.
President Jones?
Here. Okay, I need a motion to revise the agenda to add the agenda item for resolution conferring diplomas to Cincinnati Public Schools 2019 to 2020 graduates.
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we will be doing a 48-hour waiver when we get to that agenda item. Okay, so usually we have minutes at this time, but the minutes, I just wanted to report that the minutes from the May 6, 2020 board meeting will be presented for approval at the May 20th meeting at 8:30 a.m. So moving on, does anyone have any kudos?
I have a kudos.
Yeah.
Mr. Morosky, followed by Mr. Messer.
I just give a kudos to the staff at Hayes Porter. I was there on Friday, and their tech coordinator is organizing a parade through the West End and downtown for their students. I just think that's really cool. Cincinnati Police is also taking part of it, as is some players from FC Cincinnati. I'm just going to ride through, and they have like a van that plays music and just kind of ride through the neighborhood and wave at the kids. I think that's really cool. Take that extra time among all the other job duties they're accomplishing unexpectedly as we round out this school year. So kudos to the staff at Hayes Porter and particularly their tech coordinator.
Thank you, Mr. Morosky. Mr. Messer, was that you who had your hand up?
I did. Mine was, of course, something I know all of us feel, and that is just immense appreciation for everything our frontline team members are doing for our children. And so I love to see the magic happen, even when it's in my own home. And if you saw on Facebook, you probably know what I'm going to say, but I actually decided to hide out and peek and watch Olivier with his class. And of course, I was talking distance learning and virtual learning to people, and I'd say, oh, yeah, they do Google. I actually had not sat and watched it, and I was mesmerized. And, you know, they're all the students, and I was from the side, so he didn't see me, but she would ask questions, and she'd say, I need you to put your finger on your nose when you've got the answer. And so he'd see his little hand go up, and they got called on. They could talk to each other, and it was a fascinating, even though I thought I knew what it was, I had no idea what it was. And then, you know, I think at the very end, Olivier said, I love you, Miss Dessa. I miss you so much.
Yeah.
And to me, that is what, you know, there's what teachers do, and then there's what teachers do. And there's what parents do, and that's what parents, and there's a connection with our children. And I know they're working hard to make those connections and keep them, and just a kudos to all of them for the work they continue to do.
Thank you. And I think both you, Mr. Messer, and Mr. Morosky speak for all of for each of the board members and everybody who's sitting on this at this meeting, is that our frontline staff have done a great job. And you know, we're moving to something totally different. And I think just saying how much we appreciate them and acknowledging them, I think means a lot to them. They've done a great job. So thank you for the kudos. Okay, Ms. Bates, please present the retirements.
Yes, I have several retirements this evening. And the first group are from the certificated personnel: Susan M. Aielli, Carolyn C. Booker, Giselle L. Mack, Sandra Parks, and Cynthia Stevens. And from our civil service personnel, let's see, we have Karen Neoport. So we thank these professionals for their service to our children and wish them well in their retirement. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Okay, we are now at the item on our agenda for hearing the public. The board prides itself on being transparent and open as possible, consistent with the state's direction to minimize public gatherings. We are convening this video conference call to include opportunity for public comment. Here are the specific instructions for participation in hearing of the public. To speak, you will need to send a request by clicking on the hand icon on your screen. Mac and iPad users are able to access the raise hand icon located on your device. Once the request has been granted by Treasurer Wagner, you will receive a notice on your screen. Click yes to go interactive. If you do not want your video active, please disable the video camera icon. After speaking, you will briefly see the welcome screen again as you transition back to the live stream meeting. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak, and Mrs. Wagner will be our timekeeper. When the buzzer goes off, your 3 minutes are up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. Thank you. Ms. Wagner, do we have speakers?
We have one speaker so far, Jennifer Kinsley. I'm going to switch you now. You can begin, Ms. Kinsley.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for this opportunity to address the board this evening. My name's Jennifer Kinsley. I'm the proud parent of 2 CPS students, and I'm also a fellow educator. I teach in the law school at NKU Chase College of Law. And I wanted to reach out to you today because I have a concern about the fourth quarter grading policy as it is being used to determine fall sports eligibility. As we're all aware, students are really struggling during this period of time. We're in an unprecedented global epidemic that we've never seen before. And this time period is presenting unique challenges for whole swaths of students, including those who are economically and socially disadvantaged and who come from homes where parents may have faced job loss or economic instability. I am concerned that using this time period as a metric of a student's ability to participate in any program and using this period of time to define a student's eligibility for any opportunity is fundamentally unfair and widens the already too wide disparities that exist in our public school system. I am asking for the school board to do one of two things: to either declare that the fourth quarter is not a grading period for purposes of OHSAA eligibility, or to declare that the third quarter grades are the grades that are to be used for the metric of OHSAA eligibility. I'm not sure if it was an intentional policy that the board adopted or merely an oversight, but as parents, we didn't learn until late last week that the pass or incomplete grades would be used to measure sports eligibility for the fall. And that announcement came in my mind way too late for parents to be monitoring their students' progress in such a way as to ensure that they would be eligible for fall sports. So I want to make sure that the board understands that this policy, if in place, will widen disengagement. It will punish students for things that are happening right now. And it will create less opportunity, not more, for students who need the socialization and encouragement that sports provides. I'm asking you to please reconsider your policy and declare the third quarter grade as the measure of academic eligibility for sports. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Wagner?
We have Kim Foss. Go ahead, Ms. Foss.
Hi, my name is Kim Foss. I am a parent of a Gilbert A. Dater senior, and I am commenting today on discussions over the graduation procedure for the ceremony of the drive-through processional. Looking at, and I understand where some of this may have originally started, but looking at the revisions that have been made through the Ohio Department of Education and the Ohio Department of Health, I just think that it's fundamentally unfair to not allow the students out of the car to receive their diploma. I wish when the district had sent out their 3E survey, you would have asked these graduates what they wanted, what was the fundamental most important thing to them. When speaking to my daughter and a lot of her classmates, the one thing that they've all said in unison is we want to hear our name and we want to walk and receive our diploma. At this point, wearing a cap and gown, sitting in the passenger seat of a car, receiving a diploma through a window, it's just not a way to celebrate all these years of school that they worked for. And even when you look at the statement on graduation ceremonies, one of the variations that it does offer is that the graduating student does get out of the car to receive their diploma and get a photograph. That's something as a parent we are missing. There's no opportunity for us to take pictures of our graduate with some type of nice background, receiving their diploma. And it just seems like CPS is not doing what these graduates deserve. And especially looking at the fact of what so many other districts in the city are doing. You know, a lot are even doing in-person ceremonies later on in the school in the summer. And I understand that that's very challenging, but a lot are allowing individual with their parents doing like a virtual type of setting where it's the graduate and the parent. So you get that experience. You get the chance to walk across the stage. You get the chance to receive your diploma. You get a chance to be proud to wear your cap and gown. You get photographs. What we're doing, handing a diploma through a car window, is really just a slap in the face to these students. And it just does not, it's not fair to them. They have already lost everything of their senior year, proms, senior dinners, senior trips, everything. And you're taking the one last thing away from them, just the ability to walk across the stage. And it'd be easy to implement. If we did the drive-through at all the different schools, it would be easy to implement a designated spot in this drive-through processional. The car would stop. The graduate would get out, hear their name, walk up to the principal, receive their diploma, have a photographer take their picture, get back in the car, and we proceed along. We're not even talking about very much increase in time, but that little change could implement everything and make it fundamentally more memorable to what these kids deserve. So that is what I wanted to say tonight. And I really, truly hope for all of these seniors that you will please consider changing this drive-through ceremony.
Thank you. Ms. Wagner?
So I believe we have one last speaker. I think it's Ms. Sellers. Go ahead, Ms. Sellers.
Hi, this is Julie Sellers. Can you see me okay or hear me okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to say, last week I told you that our resolution for the reopening of schools in the manner would be voted on Thursday, and I did email that to all of the board members. And I just wanted to say that we put in over 1,000 hours of work with this resolution. I hope that everybody read it. It's really important that as we move forward, that we have enough input into what the plan is, because our district depends on our educators trusting that their schools will be safe, and our families will have to be trusting that the children will be safe as we enter. I sent many of you a video from Europe on how they're reopening their schools. There was an article in the New York Times that included a link to a video. It's really, they really took the time to make sure that they were doing it right. I am on that state committee with the state superintendent and the governor's office, and I have seen the draft that should be coming out this week or next. And in actuality, our resolution is very, very, very closely aligned with what the state's guidelines are going to be. So I hope that CFT will have a role in how this plan rolls out, and that we can have discussions on making sure that all students and employees will be able to return to school in the fall, even if they are in a high risk health conditions. I also wanted to let you know and invite the board. We are going to be doing a car parade for the retirees from this year, and we have ordered yard signs for those retirees, and we will be delivering a yard sign and a gift and card to each retiree. Because it is spread out, we looked at all of the addresses and MapQuest it all, and it looks like there might be 3 different clusters that we will be working on. So I think that when we get closer to that date, we're not going to have it till after probably for another 2 weeks. But after we go out and visit, we will make sure that we will let you know if you want to participate in the car parade for the retirees, because this has been a really difficult year for them as they are retired, because they have given 30, 40 years to this district, and they had a strong connection with the students, and it's been difficult for them because they didn't get to have a send-off at their schools. They didn't get to say goodbye to their students, and it's been especially traumatic for some of those teachers. So I just didn't know if there was any responses about the resolution, and if people thought that it was complete. We're not saying that this is a plan, but what we are saying is that this is what we need to work on as we move forward. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another speaker named Kendra. Go ahead, Kendra, we can hear you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm a parent, a concerned parent, and I'm with Gamble Montessori. I just want to know, how can we come together to make safe, but make the graduation a little bit better? I think it's more so an insult not only to me as a parent, but to the kids. My daughter, who is graduating, for items to be handed to her in the window, maybe she's in the back seat. That's an insult. These kids went from school from Hyde to now to see this year. They already missed out on prom and all the extra, the good stuff that they were supposed to get this year. So for just items to be handed through the car window, the kids feel like it's an insult, also the parents. And another thing, I asked earlier to Mr. Porter, a graduation is not a graduation without the tassel being turned on the cap and gown. He does not have that figured out, he stated, which was a good question brought to his attention. Now, if the graduation plans is already mapped out and planned out, how do you not have that situated in to where you turn the tassel on your cap to make it official? One more thing. Then we're doing the drive-through. I'm quite sure they'll have the families line up in alphabetical order. You got at the end of the alphabet, just a particular child that's at the end of the alphabet. And this back parking lot, just that one car with the CPS staff, and she's giving her stuff through the car window. No one there to cheer her on, no one there to say who, but those few people that was in that car and was giving, she'd get her diploma and all the goodies or whatever. How can we just come together to make this better, for the kids and the family? Even if you have it somewhere in an open football field and you only have 5 guests per family, and we can space the kids out 6 feet apart and they still can have a regular ceremony versus a drive-through car. That's just so unfair to these kids.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have anybody in the queue. Is there anybody else in public that would like to speak?
Is that it, Ms. Wagner?
I think that
Okay.
ends us for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll continue on with the agenda. Superintendent Mitchell, please introduce this evening's presentation.
Yes, thank you. So last week, I talked about moving from crisis to recovery to the future. And so many weeks ago, we made a pivot from crisis to recovery, and we'll be able to begin phase 1 of our recovery plan next week. We have also done a pivot to focus on the future. So we recognize that the fall, in terms of August, is only 3 months away, and that in preparing for the future, we also have to prepare and think about the growth of the district. The district has been growing about a school a year for the last several years. Our market share is considerably risen from over the last 5 years, and we've had to add additional buildings to our complement to accommodate all of the students. And so it is with great joy that tonight we talk about one of the major goals of the strategic plan, which is growth. And this evening will be an update on the growth plan moving forward as we think about the future of CPS. So in the strategic plan, we know that growth, under that goal, we consider our school district the #1 choice for families in the Cincinnati area. There are 3 key messages that follow out of this presentation. This is about our students, it's about the community, and it's also very much about the future of CPS. And we were moving in this direction prior to COVID-19, but as we think about the impact of COVID-19, it is increasingly more important for us to think about the future of our district and how we plan to be able to provide an educational proposition for our young people, an excellent one. So phase 1 of our work really started this year, which was the launch of the strategic plan this year. In terms of moving Gamble Montessori, the high school, to the Mercy building and offering more space for expansion, opening the new Gamble Elementary Montessori school, which was not on the radar for 2 years ago. And then in addition to that, transitioning the students who were at Vine Street, the pre-K and kindergarten, up to the new Clifton building. And so this year, Clifton opened with pre-K through 2nd grade. So that was phase 1 of our growth strategy for the district. Phase 2, as you can see, is pretty robust and has a lot of moving parts and pieces to it. From opening primary site as well as preschool, as well as expanding some sites at the elementary level and high school, as well as expanding some campuses themselves, in addition to expanding on the late start, as well as looking at an east-west concept and a central corridor for the district. So now I'll go into just a little bit more detail about phase 2. So the first property I would like to be able to highlight is a new property, and we're calling it Mozart for right this moment, but this will open for preschool for next school year with 5 classrooms and a large motor room, as well as a cafeteria with a secure entrance. There's the opportunity to be able to expand beyond 5 classrooms. So we're looking at essentially opening this school with at least 100 kids starting for next school year. You can see that we've outlined the staff in terms of the ratio for students. This is a full day preschool experience offering social and emotional learning, language and literacy, mathematics, social studies, arts, technology, and physical well-being, as well as a muscle room for our young people. So we believe that this will be an outstanding, excellent site to be able to welcome our kids who are on the west side of town, who are looking for an excellent option for preschool. I'd like to just kind of bring back to the public's memory that the west side is bustling with children on that side of the town. And so we're constantly looking for opportunities to be able to expand our footprint to make sure that we can accommodate all the students on the west side of town. In addition to this property, we will be expanding on Carthage. Carthage is a building that we've owned for quite some time, was closed at one point in time, but was reopened as a pre-K site. So next year, we plan to expand it beyond pre-K to kindergarten to first grade, and it will be the feeder school into Hartwell. So Carthage will be pre-K through, eventually through 1, and then Hartwell will be grades 2 through 8. In addition, we'll be expanding Clifton schools. So this year, Clifton was pre-K through 2nd grade. Next year, it will go to 3rd grade, and then eventually it will transition all the way to be a pre-K through 6th grade building. Hyde Park is another site that we're going to be doing some expansion. So the board members know and many community members know that currently Hyde Park, we are leasing space across the street at a bank where we have 3 classrooms, and those children have to cross between the main campus and those 3 classrooms twice a day. And so it has caused a major safety concern for our Hyde Park students and families. And so our plan for next school year is to be able to add a mobile innovation space to that campus so that kids will no longer have to cross the street, but will be able to access classrooms that are right there on the campus in a mobile lab space. We will then constantly look at the projections for enrollment to identify whether there is a need to expand the campus in terms of an addition to the building. Next, I'm going to invite our Deputy Superintendent, Tiana Amat, to talk about the extensive expansions that will take place at the Dater High School campus as well as West High campus.
Good evening. I'm so excited to present the expansion model on the West Side. Our lens was around equity and opportunities on the West Side. So this slide here is just showing some of the physical improvements on the campus for Dater High School, allowing them to have a small auditorium, converting some classrooms, removing lockers to expand the lunchroom, purchasing of furniture for the resource rooms, and signage. Next slide, please. The purpose of the expansion is around first safety and security. We wanted to right size the campus. Westside had more square footage with less students. So that was important to look at. Also to add programming, equitable opportunities for honors, AP, advanced placement, college credit plus, and IB. We are also looking at pathways, global learning, which falls under IB, public safety, expanding culinary arts, and then we're looking at leadership and technology based on our Vision 2020 goals. And on the West Side, we have entrepreneurship and Leader in Me. So how can we expand our offerings at the high school with Vision 2020, where we have built so much success there at the elementary level? We wanted to build on our strengths. So we looked at data from Naviance and looked at student-centered choices. The West Side is highly diverse with students of speakers of other languages. So looking at our world language program. And both Data and West Side are looking at SEL, social emotional learning pilot. And they have done an audit and are working on a 3-year action plan. So looking at enrollment and right sizing, for the incoming 7th graders, we will have 86 new students with an increase on the Western Hills campus with roughly 225 7th grade students. We are looking at staffing and consolidating 7th and 8th grade with an additional guidance counselor. And then adding a 7th grade team and adding guidance counselor. I spoke briefly about the facilities of updating the library area, the community space, looking at the junior high classrooms, and then the performance arts space. In the IB programming, the arts is a part of that curriculum. And I never knew this, but when going through the campus, on West Side, there are actually 2 auditoriums, a larger one and a smaller one on the West campus. So the smaller one would be updated for Data High School use. And then we're looking at the overall allocation of classroom spaces on the West Side. As far as professional development, we have started spring and getting ready for IB courses online. And then we're also doing a QI SEL project. For Western Hills, we're looking at PD around an in-house honors and AA track with a focus on an inclusive honors program. So looking at the concepts and philosophy. And we have some talented teachers who have done this work and are leading this PD. For the academic expansion, we're looking at the IB program, IB middle years program for 7th and 8th graders. And then at the West Campus, reinstating the honors program 7th through 9th grade. So those kids will be prepared to go into AP courses. At Data High School, adding AP Spanish, and then increasing AP courses from 3 to 6 at Western Hills. And those courses are human geography, psychology, and Spanish. For College Credit Plus, offering a variety of options, not just College Credit Plus on campus, but off campus, giving students more choice. And then expanding College Credit Plus at West with English 2, and then offering College Credit Plus in the EMT program. For our pathways, we're looking at expanding culinary arts and the supply chain. As you know, we have a partnership with DHL. We are also looking at UPS. For West, expanding our public safety to 10th grade, specifically foundations in firefighting and emergency medical services. And here's some updates for specifically around the IB program. Again, for the middle years, and then we will grow a grade after that. We started the professional development. There was an online course for all teachers, and it was just an introductory course. But in the summer, we're looking at the core content courses, so they get a little more specific. And the arts, language acquisition, and they have a course specifically for administrators. As students are identified, the communications office is preparing a one-pager for families, and the school is calling families now, describing, connecting with them about the IB program. The collaboration across schools, again, it's looking at our Vision 2020 models. So Roberts Academy will be also looking at IB from 6th to 8th grade. To have those courses, they already have the foreign language offering. So just building upon the success of Vision 2020 to support our learning at the Westside campus. We are very excited about this program. It is offering high academic programming for the Westside. And I just think it will have parents will receive it well, students will enjoy it. And the other last thing that I would like to add specifically for the IB program, not only is it you can graduate with a diploma, but you can also say, hey, I don't want to do that, and go into the state has a pathway, an IB cluster pathway. Or kids can say in their 11th grade year, no, thank you, I want to pursue another option like culinary arts. So giving kids choices, supporting them, and high academic programming is what's planned for the West Side. Thank you.
So you can see that our plan for growth includes the expansion of existing buildings and existing programming to new buildings as we look at the Lighthouse School, which will be opening in August of 2020 as one of our new sites as well. You can see that currently that school has a maximum student enrollment of about 75 students. So we're eager to be able to get into that school to be able to work with students who have significant behavioral and mental health challenges and concerns. And so we're excited to be able to add this to our complement of schools for next school year. In addition, as we think about this remote learning that we have found ourselves in, we are going to be expanding our offerings as it relates to our digital academy. So you know that we have a digital academy within our school district, which is K through 12th grade, and we're looking to be able to expand those offerings for our students, especially for students whose parents may not feel comfortable with them returning to school because they may have pre-existing health conditions. And so this will be yet another offering that we will have for our families with our expansion of our digital academy. And so we'll be coming out with a lot more information very soon to parents and the public regarding this expansion. I'd like to be able to just to highlight some other additional expansion opportunities that are related to our growth program. We will be continuing to implement more schools with a later start time for next school year as it relates to our high schools. You'll be familiar with the fact that some of our schools had a later start this year as compared to last year, and we're going to be adding more for the upcoming school year. We also are moving forward next year with a West and East concept in terms of our gifted program and our exceptionally bright kids in terms of Spencer and Cheviot. And so those students who live east of 75 will be attending Spencer. And we've expanded our programming at Cheviot to be able to offer more gifted opportunities as well as exceptional opportunities for those kids at the west side of 75. Before we closed our doors, our buildings for the break for COVID-19, we had really started a lot of work with our under-enrolled elementary and high schools. And so that work is continuing to be able to recruit kids to those schools to be able to increase their enrollment. In addition, we are not recommending, based upon the size of the students who attend Spencer currently, to add on to that building, but to make sure that we have a science lab that would be an enhancement to the building to be able to accommodate our high school students. And so at Spencer, we're looking at what modifications can we make to the existing building that might be more conducive to high school students. So I've mentioned preschool expansion, new buildings. I've mentioned elementary expansion, as well as new buildings, as well as high school expansion. It's also important to note that we do have some schools that will be expanding their footprint as well. These are existing schools. So Cairns will be going to 3rd grade next year. LEAP will go to 6th grade and will complete its pre-K through 6th grade model. Spencer will be adding 11th grade, and Gamble Montessori will be adding some classrooms to its complement as well, in addition to the 5 classrooms that we're going to be opening at the Mozart location in terms of those 100 students. So then we move into phase 3, which is 2021-22, and that is to very carefully be able to look at the enrollment for Hyde Park to identify whether an expansion is the route in which we need to go with Hyde Park, Pleasant Ridge, Walnut Hills, and then really get into a east, west, and central designation as it relates to high schools, and then a possible new campus to add to our footprint. So you may recall that Hyde Park School has a number of students who currently live outside of the Hyde Park attendance boundaries, and some of those students are there to create some diversity within the school. If those student siblings were removed from the school, then it would or could lower the enrollment at Hyde Park School. In addition to the fact that this year is the last year for the college prep program, or I'm sorry, the gifted program at Hyde Park School, that is now phasing out, and those kids will be going to Spencer. And so we expect a reduction in the enrollment in Hyde Park. At the same time, we do recognize that Hyde Park currently doesn't have enough space for the students who attended there this year, and so we'll be moving back onto campus into those the mobile unit that I mentioned. And again, very closely monitoring the enrollment as to the need for an expansion in terms of a building onto the existing Hyde Park building. In terms of Pleasant Ridge, there are 2 options that we're looking at for Pleasant Ridge, and the community engagement will begin very soon with a vendor that we're using, a partner called Cohere. And so with Pleasant Ridge, we're looking at an expansion onto that building. There are 2 options. One is to build another story on top of the existing school. I will say that there is a con to that end, and that is while the construction is taking place, the buildings, the rooms under the construction site cannot be occupied, which means we would lose some classroom and office space and would need some additional space that we call swing space to be able to place those offices as well as classrooms. Another option is to build off of the back of the building, which means we would be relocating the kindergarten playground. And so we're looking at a couple of different options, and we'll be doing some community engagement as to just helping to decide which option the district will go with. And then there's Walnut Hills, which we are proposing an expansion for Walnut Hills High School to be able to offer them the ability to fit a little bit more comfortably within their footprint on that campus. And so you can see that there are 3 phases to the growth plan, which is outlined in the district strategic plan, and phase 1 actually began this school year. And that concludes the presentation on the growth model for this year and the next 2 following years.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. Board members have questions or comments? Ms. Bowers, followed by Mr. Messer.
Thank you, Superintendent and Deputy Superintendent Amat. I just want a little clarity on the IB curriculum at Dater. And I heard you mention a little bit about 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at Roberts, along with the middle school at Dater. Is there for the IB program, is there a assessment or a evaluation that's needed, or do students just automatically will start in the IB curriculum next year? And if that is the case, I heard Deputy Superintendent Amat explain that if a student decides to change their mind in the middle of their process or the end of their pathway, that they could not be on the IB pathway and switch over to a different one, which is, I'm thinking, is a little bit similar to the special college preparatory program that was there. It was pretty similar. Is that still the correct option for students if they decide not to stay on the IB pathway?
Yes, that is correct. And there is no entrance exam for the IB program.
So so students who pick Dater to go to, they'll automatically be up to speed on what the requirements are for that curriculum.
Correct. The training is around, it's an inclusive program. And so the training of the teachers, it's very important. So that's why we got it started early. The application for the IB program is complete and accepted. So that comes with support from the organization.
So does that start next year, or are we looking?
Yeah.
Okay, so teachers will be prepared to receive students. They would have already been trained and ready
Correct.
to take off in August. And the second question I have, thank you, Deputy Superintendent, is the Cheviot. And I think I kind of inquired about this before when we talk about East-West schools with Spencer for the gifted and then Cheviot. What happens to those students after they leave Cheviot in 6th grade? Do they go to the feeder at the IB school? Is that an option for them, or where do they go if they want to continue on a gifted and the track as Spencer is adding grades? But where will Cheviot students go?
So the programming, when you talk about a gifted curriculum, it's really about having those honors options, those AP courses. So that's why we expanded those courses on the West Side, so the Cheviot students can have access to those courses. So it's not, so at Spencer, there's not a gifted class. It's about having the courses like honors and AP. So we have expanded those opportunities on the West Side.
So they will be included in Western Hills. They'll be included in the IB program?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Messer? We can't hear you. We still can't hear you. No. Hold on. Okay, so while we need to figure out the technical glitch there with Mr. Messer. So we'll go to Mr. Lindy. We'll come back. I see you, Ms. Bates.
Superintendent, I wanted to share, first of all, that I think this is really exciting to see. And it's been so interesting in my first couple months just to hear from different groups of parents about concerns they have and things they hope for. And it's so clear to see how the things that we've been hearing are reflected in the plan that you're sharing. And that's not easy. And I wanted to say thank you. And I'm trying to think if there's an issue that has come up that I can't see somewhere in the slides that you presented. And I think that's really exciting. So thank you. I think the question I had was about Hyde Park and Pleasant Ridge. I think those have been two groups of parents that have consistently come to some board meetings and shared their concerns. And it's real clear what the strategy is in Hyde Park. I think that makes a ton of sense. I think my question is, would it be possible to do so I have this assumption based on what I heard from parents that some flex swing space for PRM would also be helpful until there's a building expansion based on current classroom capacity. One, is that right, or am I wrong? And B, if that is right, is there any possibility to do that sooner so that we could also move on that school in next school year? Or is there a really good reason why we're not doing that, which you can share with us?
Yes. So right at this moment, we don't have the swing space to put the PRM students if the decision is made to build on top of the existing building. And it takes, we would need about 18 to 24 month swing space for them. So, and then the other piece is that if we build off of the back end, there's still that time period. And so we were asked to have some engagement before a decision was made. And so that's what Cohere has put together as a proposal for engagement, which we discussed last week. And I sent communication to the LSDMC recently, letting them know that Cohere would be in contact to do some public engagement. In order to move on either of those plans after the public engagement will require a board decision as to which route we're going to go to begin that work.
I think I'm with you on 100% of that, Superintendent. I think I was trying to ask what I hope is an easier question. Maybe I'm wrong, which is like, it sounds like for the 2021 school year, there's some real, sorry, let me just check this. So are you saying that we would start construction on PRM in the 2021 school year, or that wouldn't start till 21-22?
No, I believe that there's a potential to start construction in 2021. I'm not saying at what point that might happen. I think that we need first of all, a decision made after there's some public engagement, and we're trying to do the public engagement as quickly as possible, a decision made, and then be able to look at the district finances to figure out the best option of paying for this to move forward.
I think that makes great sense. I think I was off by a year, and so that clarified. So thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Messer, did we get you connected?
Am I working now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Go
good.
ahead. Go ahead, and then Ms. Bates, you'll follow.
When all else fails, reboot. So I did that. Yeah, the thing that came to mind, obviously we've talked a lot about different options and things as we've gone along this journey, and lots of questions have come out, but just a kind of public recognition of the fact that this shows that this is a district on the move, and not just growing, but strengthening. And, I love that we have doubled down even further to ensure that we bridge the gap between our east side and our west side portions of the district. And that, we are cautiously looking at, the really big dollar expansions. I'm very excited about building new and all that stuff, but given the times that we're in, there's so much uncertainty. So I really appreciate, and I think there's probably a lot of people that are in those schools that are like, I want to get going, I want to get building, but the fiscally responsible piece says, and we have to pay for that, and there are just so many unknowns that'll really help us. So I love that we have a little bit of a gap, but it's not 20 years away. We know where it is, but just that public recognition that we have so many things that we have to more fully understand, i.e. our funding sources and property tax impact and all those types of things. So all of those are great, and I specifically love, going deeper in our career tech and seeing that program continue to grow, because I think other presentations we've seen throughout the year says that is a place where we should further invest. So thank you for highlighting those items as well.
Thank you, Mr. Messer. Ms. Bates, followed by Mr. Morosky.
Yes, I'm particularly excited about the AP program at West Hyde, but I wanted to ask you to go a little deeper into that because it hadn't worked at Dater, doing a Walnut Hills Light, for a better way of putting it. So this really has to be a special program, and I think it really we have a great opportunity to make this, a program of destiny, that, yay, I really want to go to this program at West Hyde. But is it a program with a cohort of students, or is it just a lot of AP courses?
Yes, it's not, typically there's no set program. It's about options and building the AP options, but also early preparedness. So the honors track, reinstating the honors track at the middle school so that the kids are prepared to go into AP courses and have access to the classes. So I would say the programming piece is really about early awareness and preparation at the middle school level, and then providing choice for kids in their high school years, later high school years.
Thank you. Mr. Morosky.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Cool. Not to beat a dead horse, but superintendent, deputy superintendent, this is all amazing. And I think it's important to highlight that Cincinnati Public Schools can walk and chew gum at the same time. And while we are planning for our recovery in a post-COVID world, we also have to recognize that we're growing. And we're ostensibly going to grow even more because of the economic downturn, which I know we're going to talk about later on in this meeting. Just two things. One is I can't explain how excited I am to echo Ms. Bates about the new sort of Westside campus idea that Ms. Bolton has talked about for some time, and that I know former member Davis was always tenacious about talking about that side of town. And I think in addition to the academic piece, building upon that, and to Mr. Messer's point about adding the career tech with the IB all in one, but thinking of that as a single unit, I think what that will do for that campus it is immeasurable. A unifying message, that social emotional piece on top of this new academic rigor is something, in my highly biased opinion, I think I'm probably going to be the proudest of as we move forward. And so kudos to both of you. And then the only question I have, and I think it's probably been answered, I just want to, again, highlight it for the edification of folks watching, to Mr. Lindy's point of the sheer amount of community members who have come regarding PRM. HPS, with the Hyde Park piece, I know people are going to be really, really excited about not having kids crossing the street. And I just want to give you an opportunity to sort of put a pin in whether or not this is a temporary or permanent solution, i.e. looking forward. And I know Mr. Lindy was talking about this when we kind of got in the PRM bit. Is it possible to continue to add, as we, like to your point, Superintendent, watch the enrollment? If it goes up, yes. If it stays where it is, probably not. I'm just want to give you an opportunity. And then I did have one more question. I apologize.
It's okay.
But I'll pause.
So, yes, I'm sorry. So the mobile innovation space is a temporary space that keeps kids from going across the street. In the event that the enrollment maintains or grows, then we would propose for an addition.
Cool.
So
awesome. That's right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you finished? I'm sorry.
Did you ask me about PRM? Sorry.
No. The other question I had was, it's a Mozart property. I am no construction engineering person by any stretch of the imagination. It appeared to me there was space for playground, I assume there is, right? There'll be a
Yes.
playground on that site? Okay,
Yes.
cool. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Bolton, we haven't heard from you. Okay, Ms. Bolton.
Thank you very much. Of course, this is very exciting, and I think it's for the public. Everyone needs to know this represents a good 3, almost 4 years of work, if you really look back as to what to be doing once we started to grow. I have just a few specific questions. Junior ROTC. I did not see that in the growth plan, but I do think I've seen it on some budget references.
Yeah. Yes.
That should be there.
I know our assistant superintendent Murphy is doing research on that, looking at cost and availability for our junior ROTC. So we're in the research stage.
Okay, that's good, because I think the board has said we'll pay what we have to if we can't depend on Washington or the military to take control of that. Do change the slides that say Clifton Elementary, just because all those cans people will be they'll be emailing us right away. I think on a couple of the later slides it was okay, but I just thought, they'll be very concerned. I like the inclusion of Roberts regarding IB. Nationally, that's kind of cool, even the lower grades starting at IB. I know we're starting 6, 7, and 8, but for something like that, there's even some reference. I think people have said there are some primary schools that have that. I'm still worried about high schools on either east or west for Spencer and Cheviot. And I just still think we have to address how we're going to, what that's going to include. So that was of concern to me. Thrilled that we're talking about under enrollment, because we may have enough seats overall, but it's the concentration of seats, and that's all programming, and that's the choice that the deputy superintendent was talking about. So I think recruitment is useful. I'm still wondering about our assets regarding Hughes Annex and the Jacobs Center. And I know that that's nothing right now, but those two are major facilities that we still have in great I won't say disrepair, but in great need of upgrading. But those still remain, especially to Mr. Messer's point on career. And then also the Hughes piece is where it is located so close to UC and what have you. So interested about that. And I know this is minor. Well, I don't think it's minor. I take that back. The hardscaping at West High and Dater, the campus environment physically is not going to attract the kind of folks that we want to be happy there. And I would really like to see a little bit more of a rendering, and it seems insignificant, but it's all part of the branding and the welcomeness of that place. And finally, over there, that whole area behind Dater and West High is of concern to me. It's a small wooded area, and very much has been used, frankly, as some sort of, dirt fill or concrete fill. It just the campus itself of those two soon to be and once great high schools. I just want to compliment the staffs on both Dater and West High, because they've been great, just like we are complimenting the parents at the other couple of schools, particularly the staffs at Dater and West High have really been great advocates for building those two schools together and back up. So I'm excited. This is all great, but Hughes and Jacobs, where they fit, and then some hardscaping issues. Junior RTC, Roberts is good. Oh, career, because Mr. Morawski and I are still into that whole innovation piece that you made us get to like a couple of years ago. The idea that campus is going to be such a high career prep and high academic college prep with so many choices, the innovation piece still remains something that could be there. And on the West Side, as a native West Sider, to the deputy superintendent's point about entrepreneurship, and Leader in Me, I would hope that in the career path, we might expand the business piece, especially for West High and Dater. So I think that's a career path that the local community would also embrace. It's very much a pro-business side of town. Thank you. This is great work. I'm excited.
Yes. And then the final comment, I'm excited about all this too. And in the best of all worlds, I want to be able to do all of these things. But the reality of it is when we look at finances, we know we have to prioritize. So that's keeping that as a thought for future consideration. I am I'm happy about all of them, but just especially curious about the under-enrolled schools, as Ms. Bolton pointed out. It's in phase 3, but given that it seems like everything's going to be moving, there's some shifting and things going on, might it be worth the time or while to even consider earlier phase-in in some of the schools that are under-enrolled? And that's just food for thought at this point. I don't know. And we don't have an idea yet of which schools, we may have talked about it a while ago, but which schools are under-enrolled and that kind of thing. So just a lot of potential there, I think.
Yes. So we identified 10 schools that are under-enrolled, and they're in phase 2. So it's in 2021. So it's next school year. Okay. So we actually started to work with them this year in preparation for increasing their enrollment. So that's for next year. Mozart, I just wanted to double check the fact check.
Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean,
there's a muscle room, Mr. Morosky, and an outside playground. For Mozart, there's an indoor muscle room and an outside playground. I also did check on the junior ROTC, and we are moving forward with the junior ROTC for West High. In terms of Jacobs and Hughes, in the spirit of transparency, we have not looked into that significantly because our plates are really full with the number of projects we're trying to get done right now, in addition to responding to the pandemic. And so we tried to hit those areas that we most heard from the board expressing an interest, as well as the community. It's something that we will definitely look at. But as you can see, there are about 10 projects on the slate for phase 2, which is in 3 months, in addition to working through this pandemic. And so we have not gotten to Jacobs and Hughes at this point. In terms of an innovation school, we are really looking and hoping to have a new campus for an innovation site.
Gotcha.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Morosky, final comment.
And only because the superintendent brought it up, I was just going to email it because with the playground piece, there were some community folks that had been curious if the playground, if you may not know, fine, if it would be in the front or in where the parking is between the White Castle and the building.
Yes, so I don't know. I have it on my PowerPoint, but it's too small for me to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to email you all the PowerPoint and put it on our website so you guys can see all the detail. There's a rendering. Yes.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
You're welcome. No problem.
Ms. Bolton, final comment again? Okay.
Right. It could just a request, and I don't want to make it an assignment, but it'd be great to see the list of the 10 under-enrolled schools. I know you've shared that with us before, but it was part of a larger chart, and maybe the status has changed. Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Great. Okay. Any other questions or comments for a wonderful presentation? Thank you for putting it up on the website and sending it to board staff. Thanks so much. Okay, so moving on to this evening's board matters, we have 2 items. One is enrollment forecasting. So it ties a little bit to what we just talked about. but I don't know if there's a broader discussion that maybe someone wanted to have. So Ms. Bolton, I believe that was you who added that agenda item?
Yes, I added that. It was some weeks ago that it came to our attention, and I think we figured that this would be a good opportunity since we're talking about growth. And I don't know if the administration has some information to share with us. I know that there's been some dialogue occasionally with the board about, will the COVID situation increase or decrease our enrollment? How do we anticipate that? Is the preschool enrollment more than usual or less as an indicator? And obviously, as we're emphasizing growth, ultimately in the long run, we're thinking we're going to continue to grow, but will we grow at the same pace? And how do we matriculate the increase in preschool kids going through our elementary? So there's the real reasons to kind of have a board discussion about it, as well as whatever information or thoughts that the administration might have to share with us.
Okay, Ms. Bates?
And I know that this is really early to be asking for this information, but we just closed the enrollment process for high school and magnet. So when you get that data compiled, that would be very helpful to know and make sure it syncs with the growth plan.
Okay. Any other discussion around that? It sounds like this is something we want to add to our upcoming agenda, giving the superintendent and her team time to pull together some data for us. So we'll work on that. Anything else about the enrollment forecast? Great. Okay. So board committee structure, I believe Ms. Bowers had a very specific question around that, but I think we put that on there because, number one, we had made an earlier decision, like in our very first meeting, that we would suspend committee meetings unless there was a need, high priority need to have a meeting. Then we talked about, we've had some, so we have a couple of things that are still outstanding, one being the ad hoc recommendations, which leads to the question that Ms. Bowers had about an issue, a subject. So Ms. Bowers, why don't you go ahead and put your concern on the table? We can't hear you. Turn on your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're at the point where there is a decision that has to be made regarding the student code of conduct for next school year. And so we are not clear, or I'm not clear on where that actually falls as far as, I think with ad hoc, when we were talking about work plans, it was recommended that the student code of conduct or discipline falls up under health and safety that coincides with positive or PBIS, but it was never decided on. I think as SAC committee, we agreed to present it to the board as a recommendation based on ad hoc's suggestion, and then we never ended it. Nothing ever became of that. So it's kind of still on the table. And board member Bolton and I kind of had some discussion about why we think it should be an either or, because it crosses both boundaries a little bit and both committees, but we just need to make a decision on where that lands and what makes most sense so that the superintendent and her leadership team can go ahead and decide on that student code of conduct.
Okay. Any thoughts? Any discussion about that, board members? Ms. Bolton?
Yeah, I know that there's been tremendous work by the administration and the board, especially student achievement, on evolving the code of conduct to be much more than just a behavior kind of thing. So, I mean, it doesn't make too much difference to me which committee takes it. I do know, though, that the administration is reaching a point of having to go to press. And it's usually the administration that puts forward the first major changes, and then board members react to it and add to it. And I'm sure we're getting close to when that has to be done and passed by the board. And so there's another place where not having the committees meet and not finishing up the protocol piece or whatever, we are kind of falling a little bit behind there. But maybe the superintendent can tell us when these things have to be printed and what additions they're making. Obviously, there has to be a whole new chapter about virtual and God knows what else about behavior. So I feel for Chairman Bowers on what to do about it, because it does include the board's oversight as well for this particular thing.
Okay. Superintendent, did you have a comment? I don't know. I didn't see your hand. I just saw you shaking your head.
Yes. So, I mean, we should really probably have this finished and finalized at the latest, mid-June at the latest, because we've got to take it to print. So it seems to me, I remember a timeline of like July in which we take it to print so that we have it available and ready for parents by the time school opens.
Okay.
So I apologize. Yeah. I couldn't remember which committee the code of conduct landed in. I couldn't remember if it was SAC or health and safety.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Bates, turn on your mic. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. We can't.
What about now?
Almost.
Wait.
Okay.
Is it not working?
We hear you now.
Good. Okay. And I forgot what I was going to say. No. No, it landed in health and safety because according to the strategic plan, that's where it was, where the code of conduct was under the health safety part of the strategic plan. That being said, I really do believe parents are going to be looking for, as was previously discussed by a prior speaker, some significant changes pertaining to COVID-19 and how that's going to be handled with the student body. So, I mean, I'm not in favor of having a committee meeting just so we can do this. I would rather the administration take the extra time to work on this and then bring it to the full board.
Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think it would be good for board members to review the current one, just to refamiliarize themselves with some of the stuff that's been there for a while and some of the newer stuff that was added this year. But yeah, Melanie's right that the administration presents a draft and then the board reacts to that draft. It would be a committee reacting to that draft normally, but the whole board can react to that draft. And there shouldn't be super major changes any more than they're kind of speaking to our new reality that we're in. So I think that makes sense. They should do the administration can do a draft of the changes that they need to see, and the whole board can review it. And then, you know, when we start again next year or whatever, if people want it to be in health and safety, they can be.
Yeah.
I still think it belongs.
Yes. Ms. Bowers? Ms. Bowers?
I was going to say, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Can you hear me? I was going to say that I agree with Eve and Melanie. That just makes sense regarding that time frame and the situation.
Okay. Yeah. I agree too. I also, though, I think the bigger discussion, however, is we never really finalized the new committee structure. So that needs to happen. And I believe, Ms. Bates, you shared with me a while ago that you thought that the ad hoc recommendations were ready to come before the board. Is that correct?
The meeting that was going to happen was going to synthesize the input from the committees and the individual board members. So we have that information because we had those meetings. We just haven't gotten together as a committee to put it together. Now, that doesn't mean we have to come together as a committee. We can ask Ms. Davis and Ms. Bruckner to put that in the ad hoc committee information, and we can, at least the three of us, can review it and make sure that there isn't anything conflicting or superfluous or things that.
Right. And the whole intent, I believe at the last I recall, board members were asked to give their feedback and input, and I saw that document. So if you guys would take a look at it and have Phyllis and Pat do, make some revisions or whatever needs, and then we'll be ready to go, because we definitely need to set our committee structure. We need to approve that. So that sounds good. Thanks. We don't need a committee meeting. We just need your stamp of approval to move it forward from the committee.
Right. So that Miss and Partner are on this meeting. So if they can put that on a list of things to do pretty quickly, and then the three of us, Ms. Bowers, Mr. Messer, and I can review it and then bring it to the board.
Wonderful. Ms. Bolton?
I think that's fine. I'm not sure why we aren't doing the same thing with that as we did with the student code of conduct for the whole board. But if the committee reviews it, hopefully the committee will forward whatever was suggested.
Yeah.
But at least you'll, So we have the idea of whoever was presenting whatever. So I think that's great. But I do think you should review it, but send the plenary version. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. Anything else then around board committee structure? We're good.
But I have just a thing. I just noticed tonight, after all these months, that we're on our agendas. You know how on the bottom of the agenda we do the vision and the mission, and then we do the 5 whatever. Right. I would just like us to think about putting the 5 items from the strategic plan.
Absolutely.
I don't know why. If we could just, I don't think it requires a vote or anything, but it might get us.
It just needs to be. You are absolutely right. Yes, we need to update. We will do that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. All righty. So we're going to move on. I need a motion for a 48-hour waiver of the usual requirement for the following resolution to be heard first in committee.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Treasurer Wagner, is this a roll call?
We need a roll call.
Treasurer Wagner, please call the roll. Sorry.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Messer, would you please present the following resolution, and can we get this put up on the screen, please?
Yes, President Jones, I am happy to present a resolution conferring diplomas to the Cincinnati Public School 2019-2020 graduates. Whereas pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 3319.61, it shall be the responsibility of the Board of Education to confer a diploma to all students who have successfully completed the high school curriculum and met all requirements for graduation, and
Whereas each year, a member of the Board of Education attends every CPS high school graduation to fulfill the privilege of conferring high school diplomas upon CPS graduates. And
Whereas in 2019-2020, because of continued concerns about the transmission of COVID-19, the Ohio Department of Health and Ohio Department of Education have issued a joint statement urging school districts to cancel in-person high school graduation ceremonies and to minimize the number of persons present when diplomas are conferred to graduates. And
whereas Cincinnati Public Schools is planning drive-up graduation parades in which only a limited number of persons can participate. And
whereas the Board of Education members have determined not to participate in those graduation parades to maximize the number of high school administrators, teachers, and staff to be present.
Now therefore be it resolved that having been advised by administration that the Cincinnati Public Schools class of 2019-2020 has met all the requirements for high school graduation established by the school district and by the state of Ohio, the Board of Education proudly confers the degree of high school diploma upon its 2019-2020 graduates. And
be it further resolved that the Board of Education conveys its warmest regards, gratitude, and congratulations to the class of 2019-20 graduates, their families and friends, and the teachers and staff of the high schools they attended. Mr. Messer, are you presenting this as a motion for approval?
Yes, ma'am. I present the motion for approval of the attached resolution.
Thank you. Is there a second?
second,
Any discussion? Ms. Bowers?
yes, if I can just get some clarity on the decision to do the variation 1 of the recommendation for the Ohio Department of Education versus variation 2 regarding the drive-through graduation. I'm sorry, the 2 versus 1. I think we elected as a district, or has been selected to do variation 2.
What are you referencing?
I'm referencing the Ohio Department of Health recommendations for graduate ceremonies. Based on information that we heard tonight, there's been recommended that we choose variation 1 for drive-through graduation, which simply allows the graduate to get out of the car, get their diploma, and take the picture, versus them driving up through the window. I was trying to find out the reason why variation 2 was selected versus 1, and then maybe administration can help me out on that.
Okay. Superintendent?
Yes, so in the interest of trying to make sure that we can protect all of our kids and the staff members and be able to accommodate a variety of schools. So for example, a school which like Gamble Montessori is a lot easier probably to have that happen as opposed to a Walnut Hills High School, which has a lot more students. And so we were trying not to have all these different variations so that some students felt as if they had more direct contact with their administrator and other schools didn't. And so it was quite honestly in the name of an equity model. If that's something that the board would like for us to reevaluate, it's something that we can, but at the same time, we have to do something that will fit for all of our schools and also keeps everyone safe at the same time. And so that's what it was, purely thinking about safety and the logistics of making this happen for 15 different schools.
Go ahead, Ms. Bowers.
I was just, what you said makes sense, but then you used the word equity, which means each school needs may request something different if families were involved and maybe have an option between the variations. But I do get your point about the number of kids, 468 kids at Walnut versus 65 at Gamble is a big difference. But just thinking that would have probably been ideal maybe to include the school itself with the community, just to give them maybe those two options, and then they decide. But when I hear you say that you were doing something healthy, it was like one size fits all is what I kind of heard. But then I also heard equity in there, which kind of doesn't say one size fits all. So I was just trying to get more clarity on that.
Sure. So probably equity wasn't the right word. It's more equal. So that one school doesn't say, well, you allowed this school, the kids to get out of the car, and then you have another school where you have 500 kids and you're not allowing all 500 get out of their car. And so, again, we are happy to reconsider, but from a logistics standpoint,
it'll be too chaotic.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Messer.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a comment that, my heart goes out when I hear parents that, offer their comments during our meeting tonight, and the emails that I've received and phone calls I've received. I want everybody to know that I think my entire board that I sit here with thinks about that every single day. And at the same time, something that maybe we even need to do a resolution about this, because it has been at the forefront of every decision we've made, which is making sure that our students and our staff have every safety precaution possible. And, when I heard somebody say, well, you have the principal stand there or some staff stand there and have the kids come up, that is, whether it's 60 kids or 468, that's all of those children plus everybody they've been around, either being in contact with somebody or others, or us putting a staff member in that contact. And if one of those students, then they bring that person in contact. This is just a health game that I don't think we want to play. And as difficult as the decision is, it really is nothing other than rooting ourselves in that we are trying to keep people alive in our community, and very specifically thinking through every decision through the health and safety of our staff and our students.
Yes, Ms. Bowers, last comment.
And I just want to confirm with Board Member Messer. These were suggestions given by the state and the Ohio Health Department. So it's not that CPS just kind of picked this and that's what we did. We had some options, and I was just trying to get clarity on the options as to why we as a district chose one versus the other. So variation 1 and variation 2 are both options of the Ohio Department of Health. It's not that one is better than the other. It was just these are options, and we elected that was going to be better for us. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear on why I was saying that.
I think you are clear, and I think we're all saying the same thing. That I think the superintendent and her team had to make things consistent across the board, and that what we all want is for all of our students to be safe. We want their families to be safe. We want staff to be safe, recognizing that this was a tough decision. I mean, it was a tough decision. It wasn't one that any one of us wanted to make, but we had to. And so I appreciate the comments, Ms. Bowers and Mr. Messer, and I think we're all on the same page. It's a different time right now, but we pray, we wish success to all of our graduates. We know they're going to get their diplomas, and we know, again, they're a resilient bunch, and they will move on to bigger and better things. So thank you again. So Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Mrs. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Nay.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes, thank you. Resolution is passed. Thank you. Okay, so Superintendent Mitchell, do you have a report?
The only report that I have is the printed superintendent's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the recommendations of the superintendent?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates,
Aye.
Ms. Bolton,
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers,
Aye.
Mr. Lindy,
Aye.
Mr. Messer,
Aye.
Mr. Morosky,
Yes.
President Jones.
Yes. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the report of the treasurer?
So moved.
Second. Ms. Bates, second. Any discussion? Ms. Wagner, Ms. Bolton, please call the
Yeah.
roll. Ms. Bolton?
Yes, thank you. On the fourth page, where it's I think I have three questions. Where it's talking in terms of school department responsible is the various departments of schools, lakeshore learning materials. So these are classroom materials. When we're in the process of purchasing all of, and I know we've got a curriculum and math and whatever, we are also, just for the sake of the public knowing, we are also purchasing those things that could be virtual or online as well.
That
Are we
is
not? Okay, thank
That's
you.
correct.
Thank you. And then a question on page 5, again for the public. It lists AP exams, the funding source district managed student account. And this is the purchase of 2020 advanced placement exams and free response booklets, about 1,200 of them, of exams for 1,200 students or so. And it lists Walnut Hills High School.
This is the parents paid for these things. So the money's got deposited into the student activity fund, and then Walnut Hills is using that to pay for the AP exam fees.
Okay, so that might need some explanation, that it doesn't mean that we're not doing something or we're not providing for the other students in other schools. These are the parents providing, submitting the
That's
money.
correct.
Okay, and again, in the name of equity, help me out here. The students that don't go to Walnut Hills, who helps pay for their situation if it's if the parents are doing it at Walnut?
So I need some help with that, superintendent, if you can help.
Yes, so I know that in the past we've paid for students who need it, whether they went to Walnut, Data, or whichever school. But I am going to fact check that to make sure that that is still the practice. But I know that because I've received the bills before when I was a deputy soup, I remember it. So
Yeah,
I'll just
and
fact check it.
that would be great, because I don't, as a public document, this makes it appear that what we've been doing is not continuing in that way, shape, or form. And then, so that, thank you, that's helpful. And then my last issue is the LEAP on page 6, the Permanent Improvement Fund and the automated controls upgrade. This is something that Mr. Messer has always brought up in the last couple of years. Are we keeping pace at LEAP regarding the quality of that facility? And is this part of that upgrade that I know he talked about last year and is again talked about this year?
So the Permanent Improvement Fund is the funds that we borrowed through the COPS issue to upgrade LEAP and Carthage. And so the facilities department works very hard to keep those buildings maintained and upgraded. But if you recall, we did Gamble and Mercy first, and then the rest of the COPS work is being done now. So
great.
And also, just to address your prior question, recall that the treasurer's report only shows things that are over 25,000. So if there's a school that there's a bill that is 10,000, so to speak, for AP exams, it wouldn't show up on this report because we would just process it.
And that's clarification is good and helpful. I'm just always worried that people will read more into that or in a negative way that we don't want them to.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to inquiries and updates. I just want to start with this one because I think we just kind of neglected to do this, but I think it is so important, and I'm going to ask the superintendent to update and acknowledge the Hawkins Award. Can we do that?
Yes, absolutely. So each year for the last, I want to say 14 years, Western Southern has issued an award for educators. And so it comes with an acknowledgement and a $10,000 award to that person for their personal use. And you are able to nominate people for the award. And we must have had more than 50 people who were nominated. And a joint committee of administrators review it along with CFT, and then we give 20 names to Western Southern. And then Western Southern, they put together a team and they select the winner. And so Stacy Hill Simmons, the principal of Evanston Academy, was selected as the Hawkins Award winner for this year. And so we congratulate her and her staff and all the wonderful work that she has done to really excel academic achievement in neighborhood elementary school is quite phenomenal. So congratulations to her.
Thank you, Superintendent. Okay, are there any inquiries and updates? Any additional? Mr. Lindy.
Yeah, thanks, President Jones. And please tell me if I've got this in the wrong spot of the meeting. I think there was a question that I think either there's already an answer to it, Laura, and I just don't know what it is, or like it might be part of the planning you're already doing for next year. And if it is, that's great. We can pick it up later. But I wanted to understand, do we have a number for what share of kids have access to a device and like an internet device for remote learning, and what share of kids have access to Wi-Fi?
Yes. So are you asking me for information beyond the report that I gave you last week or week before last? And is it in the report I gave you is for right now and you're asking for next year? Is that what you're asking?
No, it's possible I missed it in the report. What I saw in the report was contact logs and kids who had been contacted by the school. What I didn't see was what share of kids have access to internet and what share of kids have access to a device. If that was in there, I apologize. I can go back and look for it, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, so you may be right. So Tiane, are you on the line? Can you answer that, please? Is that in the report?
Yes, we sent those numbers to our ITM department, and roughly in the beginning of the year, it was, I would say, about almost half of our population. But we have since then, any child 6th through 12th grade can get a device. So we've been giving out devices at several locations. The ITM department has made personal calls and got the word out to get those devices out. And we're working our way down for every grade. Our goal is that all kids will have a device. So at this point, our numbers are with the ITM department as far as the devices.
Okay, and what about access?
Say that again, Ben. We lost you. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now, Carolyn?
Yeah.
What about access to internet?
The internet, we're working with partners to come up with a plan for connectivity. So when we distributed the devices, we did not give out Khajiits.
Got it.
So the
Great.
Khajiits are hotspots, and we did, though, the ITM department did go through to cost out. If they provided Khajiits for our kids, it would literally be millions of dollars per month of a payment. And so ITM and Jeremy, I'm sure he's on this video conference call as well. His plan is to roll out devices grades 2 through 12 by September to ensure that our kids have devices. And we haven't gone public with a partnership to provide Wi-Fi for kids because everything isn't completely finalized yet.
Right.
But Jeremy, can you speak to your rollout plan between now and September in terms of devices?
Certainly. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So our plan essentially is we've covered the emergency gap, and now we're looking at repurposing our entire fleet of devices that we currently own within the district and creating a take-home one-to-one program, as Laura said, for grades 2 through 12 between now and September 1st. So that is our intent from the device standpoint.
I think that sounds really great and tremendously inspiring, Jeremy. I just want to say thank you, and to you too, Tiana. And I think on the hotspot piece, part of the reason I was asking how close we are, or do we know how many kids need it, is my hope is that this is an opportunity for not just CPS, but like everybody in the city who cares a lot about next year stepping up in some way to help figure out how we fund. And I have a feeling that figuring out what it's going to take to make sure if kids do need to learn remotely next year, they can. I think that's a really compelling cause for a lot of people. And I hope that not just CPS resources, but citywide resources and philanthropy can be helpful in doing that. So thank you.
And I did want to share, I think in our last board meeting, about contacts and the percentage. We have made contact, it's unbelievable, 93% of our population. Not quite 100, but we have made contact with 93% of our student population, and our teachers and our principals and our attendance clerks, social workers, staff are continuing to move forward and push forward and reach out to our families.
Thank you for that bit of information. I can remember the first conversation we had when that question was asked, and we had like 39% of kids who we had not. And I appreciate that the very aggressive efforts to reach out and connect have worked. So that sounds great. That's good. Thank you. Okay, any other inquiries, updates? Ms. Bates?
Yes. I was on a call again on Friday with the Council of Great City School Board members, and the new stimulus bill is moving very quickly through the House, which is a Democratic majority, so we should have some success there. And we can expect that the Senate will be reluctant to have another major bailout, so we really need to put the pressure on. We had requested last week, and maybe it's happened, we just haven't seen it, that we asked that a coalition letter be drafted so that we can get our community partners to sign off on this in support of the resolution that we passed. And at the levy work group committee, I did make the request that everybody there receive a copy of this letter and a request to sign off on it. So I just wanted to follow up to let you know how quickly this was moving. So it really is a priority to get in touch with our partners and make this request of them, and also to send our resolution to Senators Portman and Brown.
Thank you. Mr. Messer?
Yeah, I just, I want to go back to kind of Ben's comment there, about asking. I was trying to see where that was kind of headed, and I think I think just to make sure nobody questions, there's nobody here at the district that doesn't want to assure 100% access for our children and 100% of devices. And it is a fiscal, since I've been on the board, just the cost of getting devices in the hands and then, making sure that when you get them in the hands, then can we support them? And there's just millions and millions and millions on top of that. And then there's the access, which is why this is really a community conversation. And I'm sure, and I don't want to blow any things that are working on, but where I've spent my time is helping to connect those resources. We have one group that came with somewhere a $50,000 to $100,000 grant. We've got another major power player in Cincinnati that it's not just CPS kids that need access to internet. Retirees, seniors, lots of people can't even get to the hospital to get doctor's appointments for heart conditions and other things because they have their own health. This is a citywide crisis. So, I think I'm excited about the things that I know that are coming together because we are, yes, a part of that. But it is a huge problem that, I think it's going to bring equity in a lot of ways. Education, yes, but healthcare, connectivity to information, and ability to do things that we would consider activities of daily living that are just not possible to some because of that access. So I think some of the Friday night, a long conversation with one of these partners talking about what they're doing for CMHA and other housing partners across the city to make sure that our kids and then all those others that don't have access are going to have that hopefully in a very, very near future. So exciting things to come. But again, I think this is a community-wide conversation. City council people I know are deeply involved, et cetera.
Right. Superintendent.
I'll defer to board member Bolton and go after her.
Thanks. Two quick ones that are kind of important to us. Our equity policy, it'll be one of the featured presentations at the the OSBA Leadership Conference in November, if indeed we're all still meeting or able to meet in groups, but the equity policy will be featured. The other thing is, this is to Mrs. Bowers, Chairman Bowers, it had been hoped that there would be new superintendent standards from the Education Standards Board for this coming year. Because of COVID and everything else, there won't be. So we have free range on however the superintendent and the SAC and whoever else wants to develop the evaluation. There are currently no terribly relevant standards coming from the state. So we can just be very, very creative. So there you go.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Ms.
Sure.
Mitchell, Superintendent.
Yes, to Mr. Messer's point, he did put us in contact with a philanthropy group, and Jeremy and I met with this gentleman, I think it was last week, who expressed a lot of interest, and I think it's real interest in supporting the connectivity work. Or quite honestly, he asked us, what do you need from us? We are more than willing to come with volunteers and money to be able to support the school district. And so we expect to hear back from this potential benefactor really soon. Again, his intent seemed very serious. We have a very significant partnership in the works, and I hesitate to mention the organizations who are a part of this and the deal that's on the table in the event that it does not come through. But there is a very serious network of people who are close to being able to pay for Wi-Fi for families. And so, again, I just want to make sure that we have our I's dotted and our T's crossed before we make a big announcement. And Jeremy, hopefully I didn't go too far out there. But some pretty big people who have come to the table, organizations who want to help us. And in terms of the advanced placement, there's a waiver that the Ohio Department of Education offers for those kids who are on free and reduced lunch. And so that's why you didn't see it for those kids. They are covered under that as opposed to their parents having to pay for it. So they take part It just doesn't come through the treasurer's report.
Thank you. Okay, any other inquiries and updates? Okay, assignments? Wow, none. Okay, but there were some things within the in the meeting that we talked about that we needed to do. We don't need to make them a formal assignment, but we do know. So we'll follow up. I'll follow up on a couple of those myself. Okay. Okay, nothing else? All right, having no other business before us, I declare the meeting adjourned. See you next week. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great
Thank
night.
you. Good night.